So this is, if I'm correct, is the third training in our design-led approach series. We started off with the approach itself, of course, and 2 weeks ago, Tessa learned us all about creating customer journeys and service blueprints. And today I will try to give you an introduction into UX, UI design, and how we can use it to create some happy faces. And those faces, of course, could be from users, our customers, or our customers' customers. What will you learn during this training, hopefully? What is the difference between UX and UI? Is there any difference? When to apply it in the Salesforce ecosystem? And the bigger part of this training, I would like to show you 3 different cases in which we have applied different techniques, skills, and methods, because I like to keep things practical. And at the end, I will do a quick recap of the benefits of UX and UI. So what is the difference between UX design and UI design anyway? Because there are many.
Frodo, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're still watching on the first slide. Is that correct?
No. I'm doing next in the. I'm using the speaker notes, and I can switch to another slide, and at my side it works great.
And at our side it doesn't.
Oh boy. Let me see. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, I probably have to. You still see it?
Yeah. Now we're going at what you will learn.
Yeah, but then I cannot switch between. Okay, let me try. It's not very. Okay, I will try because it's going to be hard to switch between slides. So it's still not switching like this?
Nope. We're now at design what's in a name.
Okay. So start over again. So what is the difference between UX design and UI design anyway? There are many design disciplines. We have UX design, UI design, service design, visual design, process design, and many, many more. But there's, of course, a lot of overlap as well. But generally speaking, design is the process of envisioning and planning the creation of something. That could be a product, a building, a service, or an interactive system. So the outcome of design can be very different, but they all have in common that it is user-centered. Users, or people in general, are at the heart of any design process. It's all about creating solutions for people that address a need or an actual problem. So let's focus on UX design and UI design. Then I have to. It's really, sorry, it's really hard to switch. It doesn't really work great like this. Okay. 1 second, I'll try to, if I do. No. I'll try it like this. User experience design is about designing all aspects of the end user interaction with the company, its services, and its products. And user interface design, on the other hand, is about designing the user interface of a digital product. It's also good to know that when we talk about the user interface, we mostly talk about the graphical user interface. However, we also have, of course, voice-based interfaces like Amazon's Alexa or Google Assistant, Apple Siri, and even Salesforce has introduced its own voice-based assistant, Hey Einstein. Just like the graphical user interface, voice interface will also need to be designed, but they require some different skills. And it's also not the topic of this talk, by the way. Next. UI design deals with the design of a single interaction screen or app, while UX design focuses more on the design of the whole experience of a user using a product or service. So the outputs also are different. UX design outputs the information architecture, user flows, and customers or user journeys. And with information architecture, I mean how information is structured, how the navigation is being set up, and what information is being presented when and where. UI design outputs the look and feel of an interactive system, the visual design and interaction design of screens and pages. If those screens and pages have to be developed, it also includes design specifications, like about colors, using fonts, all the pixel dimensions and paddings, etc. Based on the previous slide, it might come across like UX design and UI design are two separate disciplines, that you can do one without the other. But that's really not the case. In fact, UI design is a subset of user experience design. And we all know that the look and feel of an app or website is very important and really helps with creating a great user experience. On the other hand, you can design a very sleek and sexy app, but if it doesn't fulfill the user needs, it will still result in a poor overall user experience. Or it could be that your app is nicely designed, but other touch points with the brand or are not on par with the app. In that case, the overall experience will also be not optimal. So basically, they are interconnected. You cannot do one without the other. So let's have a quick look at the people who do UX and UI design, the UX designer and the UI designer. In larger teams, there's often a clear distinction between the two of them. The UI designer designs a single interaction, screen or app, while the UX designer designs the whole experience. But the common goal is to make a solution useful, usable, and enjoyable. However, at more smaller projects and most, if not all, Nextview projects, these two roles are often combined into a single person. So depending on the type of project at hand, the work is either more focused on the UX design, the UI design, or both. I think it's also fair to say that in most Salesforce projects, we need more UX design than UI design, which is obvious, of course, since a lot of UI work has already been done by Salesforce itself. So how much UX or UI design is actually needed when we look at the Salesforce ecosystem and the projects we do? It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, of course. How much UX or UI is needed depends on the type of project and the context, what is being delivered. A proof of concept, for example, can do with little less UX, while a consumer-focused application probably requires a lot more design efforts. So let's see how we can plot different Salesforce solutions on these two axes, UX design and UI design. Just out of the box, Salesforce functionality like Chatter, for example, doesn't require much, if any, additional design work. The design has already been done by Salesforce. It's much more like a turnkey solution, so to say. And of course, that's also one of the key propositions of Salesforce. On the other side of the spectrum, we have those fully custom solutions or apps that require a lot of design. With solutions like this, you basically have to design the whole UX and UI from scratch. And in a couple of minutes, I will show you an example of such a project. Most Salesforce solutions, I think, are in between those two extremes. For example, a sales, marketing, or service process doesn't require a lot of UI design, since most pages and components are standard. However, you probably do want to design the whole flow to make it easy to use and make it as efficient as possible. Reports also do not need a lot of UI design, while with Einstein Analytics dashboards, and especially Tableau, you have a lot more capabilities that allow you for great data visualizations and thus the need for UX UI design. And by the way, in this training, I'm not going to talk about data visualization, which is a bit of a shame, actually. So you might have to do another dedicated training on dashboard design and data visualization. So what's next? Salesforce Community Clouds, B2B commerce, I don't yet have a lot of experience with these solutions, but in there you have a much higher degree of design freedom, and those designers can help with creating those communities or B2B commerce portals. And of course, this plot is not really an exact science, it's not yet complete, and items can be plotted differently based on the context or use case. So maybe it's a good moment to see if we have any questions so far. And I'm also
we don't.
Okay, that's good. And I'm also curious to know how we can improve on this plot. So it doesn't have to be right now in this chat, but maybe afterwards to see if we can add additional Salesforce solutions, or maybe we have to plot them differently. Next, I would like to talk about next few projects and different UX and UI design techniques we have used. So let's start with a project that's really which I really liked a lot. It's a project we did, I think it was 2018, 19, 18 probably. I think this first case is a great example of how we would go about designing a custom app from scratch. The design challenge was to design a mobile app that would fully support field service engineers. And what made this a somewhat unusual question was that this customer was using Salesforce Field Service Lightning. And they had reviewed and tested the mobile app, but they concluded that it did not completely fulfill all their needs. So they decided that they wanted to replace the standard Salesforce app with their own custom app. So this is rather an extreme example, but also one of more a traditional non-Salesforce design process. The first step in any design process is to understand the users you are designing for. So what is it they do? What are their wants and needs? What are their pain points? And everyone has assumptions on what the user needs, even designers do. But by doing interviews and observations, we can close the gap between what we think the user needs versus what they actually needs. So by talking to users or by just observing them, you can gain a lot of insights about their wants and needs. And based on those insights, you will be able to better design with the user in mind. During this particular project, I was able to join two different service engineers during a day. One was a service engineer that had to install internet products for T-Mobile, like modems or an internet TV. And the other, a team that had to install solar panels. And by doing this, you get a much better understanding of the tasks they need to perform and how the current systems were supporting them during their job. Well, these observations combined with the output of a rather basic customer journey workshop resulted in the creation of a small journey, which with the most important steps were described on what the service engineer, in this case it was called Mark, was doing during a regular day. So this is not really like a formal customer journey or a service blueprint. That's why we call it a day in the life. But it allowed the whole team to get a common understanding of what a typical day for Mark would look like and how he could be better supported by the new app. The next and also very important step was to validate these ideas and concepts, because it's always important to make sure design works ahead of the actual development or implementation. One way of validating ideas is to create a prototype. With prototyping, you can find new user behaviors or maybe potential design failures. So it's important to test early and to test often. However, in most projects, we're lucky, to be honest, if we can test it once before it's being developed. So in this case, we had the opportunity to test it multiple times. Also validate not only with users, but also with stakeholders, architects and developers, so basically the whole team. With prototyping, you can again try to close the gap between what you think your users need and what they actually need. When you first prototype, designs are often just sketches. They are great for testing flows, navigation, and basic interactions, but they're not very well suited for testing with actual users. However, I think early prototypes are great for validating initial concepts with stakeholders and team members. You can create a prototype based on wireframes, or like in this example, something that has already a little bit more detail, but it's still what we call a low fidelity prototype. It's not yet like what it's going to be. For prototyping, you can use design tools like Sketch and InVision or Adobe XD. And from such a low fidelity prototype, you slowly move towards a more high fidelity pixel perfect design and prototype. And creating the visual design is only one of the last steps in the whole design process. It is, however, the phase that, especially for such a custom app, takes the most time, since each and every screen and interaction has to be designed from scratch. To speed up the design process, we use the design system, in this case, Google Material Design, but you could also use the Salesforce design system, the Salesforce Lighting design system. And of course, the user interface design, it requires a lot of attention to details. It's about consistency, aesthetics, creating the right interactions, and sometimes just micro interactions. Based on these visual designs, a high fidelity prototype was created that had almost the same look and feel as the final application. And with such a clickable prototype, you can validate the final designs before they are being handed over to development. In fact, also this prototype wasn't perfect the first time. It needed quite some additional iterations, but that's basically why we prototype, to do those iterations, to get feedback and to improve upon it. So to summarize, we observed users in the field to better understand their needs, create a customer journey to get a common understanding of day in the life of a service engineer, created several low and high fidelity prototypes to validate the design, and finally created a pixel perfect design that provided the design specifications for the development team. Any questions, Ilka?
No, not so far. Only one recognizing comment of Nikolai saying that he worked for T-Mobile Test, but yeah, no questions so far.
Many old-timers will recognize this project. So off to the next case, redesigning a consumer web form. As part of a proof of concept with Community Cloud and a Marketing Cloud, we conducted a consumer journey workshop to map the current process and identify areas of opportunities. And in this case, it was about the process of being able to request a quote for a life insurance policy on their website. And one of the identified opportunities was the current web form that users had to fill out as the first step. So we proposed to do a UX review to see if any, or to see if and how we could improve on the current form design. During this review, I looked at basically all aspects of the form. Was it easy to use? Does it ever become confusing? Were labels clear and concise? Were best practices being applied? What does it look like? And as you can see, this resulted in quite some suggestions on how to make this form better and, in my opinion, easier to use. And one of the main issues was the length of the form and the lack of structure. So we proposed to go from one large single form to 4 or 5 smaller forms. And by doing this, we would not only be guiding the user through the process of requesting a quote, we could also make the form more dynamic. For example, based on the desired type of insurance, we now could provide the user with the correct follow-up questions. So basically, we propose to add a few additional steps in order to create a more logical, easier user flow. While such an approach is rather similar to using a path in Salesforce, I believe. Forms are basically, well, omnipresent on the web and play a vital role in almost every e-commerce process. That's also the reason why a lot of research has been done on how to make forms more effective and easier to use. And it resulted in many best practices that we can use in our own projects as well. I want to do a very quick quiz. We don't have much time, so I'll keep it to one question. And cannot earn any points or badges. So what do you think is the better solution of these two, A or B? I cannot see your results, but maybe Ilka can say.
I'll keep you updated. And B is going strong.
Ah, very good.
Really strong. So
I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. No, sorry. Sorry, I lost.
Nicola goes for option C.
I'm very interested in that one. So let's move forward. Combo boxes are often used in web forms, and also within Salesforce, we see them a lot because they're very flexible, because they work with 2 items, but also with 20 items or 200 items. However, it always requires you to first click on it to see the available options. So if the list is less than, say, 5 or 7 items, it's often better to show these options as radio buttons. It allows the user to see what options are available right away, and it is a little bit faster. I will skip the quiz because it will save a little bit of time. So this was about fields that go together should be in line, because stacking related fields like names, addresses, and payment info cause unnecessary friction and can break a user's flow. It also has the benefit of needing less screen estate, as can be seen in this example as well. And in this case, it's also B, surprisingly. Try to match the field length and structure to the intended input. The length of a field tells the user what kind of input is expected. Use this principle when using fields with a, for example, defined character count, like a phone number, postal codes, or in this case, a credit card number. And also know that, to my knowledge at least, and I'm not entirely sure, in Salesforce Lightning always displays fields with the same length. So when I first saw it, I was also a little bit surprised based on these best practices. But they probably have a very good reason to do so. So back to the web form that allows, what's going on? So back to the web form that allows customers to request a quote for a life insurance policy. Based on some of those best practices for designing effective forms and the stepped approach, we completely redesigned the existing form. And these designs were implemented using Community Cloud and the Marketing Cloud page as part of the proof of concept. Next to the third and last case, was ideally you design a service desk process, or any process for that matter, upfront. Prototype it, validate it, and only then implement it. However, sometimes this is not possible. This could be due to many reasons, like not having the budget to do so, or because it was considered a standard Salesforce process that doesn't require design upfront. And in this case, the service desk has already been working with it for a couple of months. And based on that, they already had some ideas on how to improve it, but they also wanted to do a UX review to see how they could improve upon it even further. And during the service blueprint training of 2 weeks ago, we have already seen that being empathic is one of the key design principles. And we have already seen in the previous case that one way to gain empathy for your users is to actually observe them while they work with the system. The next step was to do a complete click-through of one of the more complex and time-consuming types of cases. And for the review, we created a very simple Miro board in which all steps were captured, steps of the process, were captured as screenshots. And all findings were added to those screenshots as post-its, so they could be easily visually linked to certain screen elements or fields. And this made it also easy to share the findings not only with the product owner, but also with our Salesforce colleagues. So what to pay attention to during such a review? Is all information available to quickly complete the task? Are all provided fields relevant? Does a user know what to do next? In this case, one of the findings was that the user really needed to know what fields to fill out and what information to enter. And of course, with training and experience, this becomes less of an issue. However, it's always best to try to minimize the amount of stuff a users have to learn and memorize. This is especially true for a service desk scenario where they have to onboard new people very often. I think it's almost on a day-to-day basis. With the service desk, it's also a numbers game. Making a task 10% faster isn't a big deal, but if the task is being performed by 50 people 10 times a day, it becomes a business case on its own. For me personally, this was also a learning experience because as a UX designer, it often comes as a second nature to immediately know or feel what can or should be changed in order to improve the UX. However, in this case, most screens were standard and the look and feel was more or less dictated by Salesforce. And my knowledge, to say the least, of Salesforce and the lighting experience is still somewhat limited. So to validate my suggestions, I asked in this case Jeffrey to comment on whether they were at all possible. And although maybe somewhat time consuming, this process was also very valuable. As a designer, I'm getting a better understanding of the capabilities and also limitations of Salesforce, while at the same time, I can help others to better view their work from a user perspective. So basically a win-win approach. I see it's 5 o'clock, Ilka, but I will try to continue very fast.
Exactly 5 o'clock.
Huh? Okay.
As a Salesforce, exactly 5 o'clock, yes.
Okay. As a Salesforce consultant, summarize this case. As a Salesforce consultant, you make design decisions as well, which is totally fine, and you should do that. And as a UX designer, we can help make your design decisions more educated by trainings like this or by just helping out in projects. And for a designer, it's key to understand the capabilities of Salesforce, because we also need to get our badges and also our certifications. So collaboration between designers and Salesforce consultants is absolutely key, in my opinion. So a very quick recap. We have seen many benefits of UX and UI design in the previous cases. But the bottom line of good UX is that it makes the difference between frustrated and delighted users. So pay attention to their needs, easy of use, aesthetics. Good design should focus on making a process or interface as efficient as possible, especially if you have to work with the system on a daily basis, like we've seen with the previous case. Small improvements can have a big effect if many people have to perform the same task often. So also try to automate things as much as possible. Don't ask the user to enter information that's already there in the system. And good UX design results in the optimal usage or adoption of the system. The easier the system is to use and is fulfilling the user's needs, the more likely they will use it as intended. I mean, as a consumer, you can just try another app if you don't like the UX of it. But if you have to work with Salesforce, you cannot just choose to work with another platform. But you can choose to not use it as intended. Keep using that spreadsheet to manage your opportunities, for example. Or just don't enter all relevant fields if you find it cumbersome. But training, the easier a system is to use, the less training is needed. And of course, ideally, using an airport system should not require you to need a manual or do any training. So can a new user easily find its way around? So try to speak the user's language, give guidance when relevant, and think about clear and consistent labeling. Add help text when relevant. And finally, making sure design works ahead of the actual implementation will mean fewer redesigns and reworkings. And less reworks means, we all know that, less development cost. So prototype whenever possible. Always try to validate with users, actual users, to find new user behaviors or design failures. So that brings me to the end of this training. So by now you should have some, at least a clear understanding of what the difference is between UX and UI, better understand what a standard UX UI design process looks like, having a better idea how design reviews can add value to your project, and hopefully know the benefits of UX. So that's a wrap for now.
Thank you very much, Frodo. And you're
any questions?
Only 4 minutes over time, so done really well.
I have to hurry.
No, we don't have any questions.
Is that good or bad?
Yeah, the compliments are dripping in, so I suppose that that was a pretty clear presentation.
Okay, good.
So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for listening. And next week the next subject will be up, so keep watching.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.